Steve Jobs from Apple Computer. We're very glad to be here tonight. It is 1958. IBM passes us a chance to buy a young, fledgling company that has just invented a new technology called xerography. 2 years later, Xerox is born, and IBM has been kicking themselves ever since. It is 10 years later, the late 60s. Digital Equipment Corporation and others invent the mini-computer. IBM dismisses the mini-computer as too small to do serious computing and therefore unimportant to their business. The act grows to become a multi-$100 million corporation before IBM finally enters the mini-computer market. It is now 10 years later, the late 70s. In 1977, Apple, a young, fledgling company on the West Coast, invents the Apple II, the first personal computer as we know it today. IBM dismisses the personal computer as too small to do serious computing and therefore unimportant to their business. The early 1980s, 1981. Apple II has become the world's most popular computer, and Apple has grown to a $300 million corporation, becoming the fastest growing company in American business history. With over 50 competitors vying for a share, IBM enters the personal computer market in November of 1981 with the IBM PC. 1983. Apple and IBM emerge as the industry's strongest competitors, each selling approximately $1 billion worth of personal computers in 1983. Each will invest greater than $50 million for research and development and another $50 million for television advertising alone in 1984, totaling almost $250 million combined. The shakeout is in full swing. The first major firm goes bankrupt, with others teetering on the brink. Total industry losses for 1983 outshadow even the combined profits of Apple and IBM for personal computers. It is now 1984. It appears IBM wants it all. Apple is perceived to be the only hope to offer IBM a run for its money. Dealers, initially welcoming IBM with open arms, now fear an IBM-dominated and controlled future. They are increasingly turning back to Apple as the only force that can ensure their future freedom. IBM wants it all, and is aiming its guns on its last obstacle to industry control, Apple. Will Big Blue dominate the entire computer industry, the entire information age? Was George Orwell right?
January 24th, Apple Computer will introduce MACINTOsh, and you'll see why 1984 won't be like 1984.
There have only been two milestone products in our industry to date. The first was Apple II in 1977. The second was the IBM PC in 1981. Come on. Let's be fair. What we need now is the third industry milestone product, and that's what Macintosh is all about. We've been working on this thing for over 2 years now, and those of us that have been really close to it will all tell you it is insanely great. And you'll have a chance to see a little bit more of it later on tonight. And we're introducing it at a mainstream price point, as most of you know, $2,495. And what I want to do is run through some of the key milestones and key features of Macintosh very briefly, just in case you haven't heard all about them, and then we'll get into some more interesting stuff here. The first thing is that Macintosh uses Lisa technology. It's got the identical user interface of Lisa with its radical ease of use, its mice, windows, pull-down menus, point, click, cut, and paste. And to accomplish this, we used exactly the same microprocessor as Lisa, 68000, running at 8 megahertz, and this thing eats 8088s for breakfast. Macintosh has about 192K bytes of memory, 64K of it is ROM, 128K of it is RAM. And inside the 64K bytes of ROM is contained the entire operating system, the entire graphics, foundation and subsystem, and the entire user interface. All the windowing stuff, the menu stuff, the mouse stuff, all in ROM. Just like the 5.25-inch disc was a breakthrough in the 70s, we think the 3.5-inch disc is a breakthrough in the 80s. And we're storing 400K bytes of formatted information on one side of these floppies, which fit inside your shirt pocket. Macintosh has two built-in serial ports. These ports are RS-232 and RS-422. They go to a megabit per second. And they also support a local interconnect scheme called AppleBus, which allows you to connect up to 32 of these products together at virtually no additional cost. Macintosh has four-voice sound and speech built in. And it talks to you on an extremely high-definition, super crisp, bitmap 9-inch black and white screen. It's really incredible, as many of you might have had a chance to see at the hands-on. We have one last hands-on. It's at 9 o'clock tonight. This screen has over twice the dots of the IBM PC or Apple II on its screen. Very high definition. And all of this power fits into a box 1/3 the size and weight of the IBM PC. It's a truly transportable product. And in addition to that, there's a whole family of stuff that goes along with it. Image writer printers, external disk drives, modems, carrying cases, and a sort of security kit so your Macintosh doesn't go anywhere without you. Now, you've seen some pictures of Macintosh in these slides. But what I'd like to do now is show you the Macintosh in person. And all of the images that you will be seeing will be generated by what's in that bag right there. Doing an awful lot of talking about Macintosh lately as well. But tonight, really for the second time ever, we'd like to let Macintosh speak for itself.
Hello, I'm Macintosh. It sure is great to get out of that bag. But just as I am to public speaking, I'd like to share with you a lesson I saw the first time I made an IBM mainframe. Never trust a computer you can't fix. Obviously I can talk, but right now I'd like to sit back and listen. So it is with considerable pride that I introduce a man who's been like a father to me, Steve Jobs.
Macintosh is targeted at two primary markets. And the first are those 25 million knowledge workers that sit behind desks, particularly in medium and small-sized offices. And the second is really the college worker, the people in colleges that we think are going to be the knowledge workers of tomorrow. There's greater than 11 million college students in America alone. Now, the telephone, we look at the telephone and we're really impressed with the telephone because it was the first and really the only desk appliance. To be a desk appliance, you have to do something really useful, and you have to be really easy to use so people don't have to spend a lot of time learning how to use this thing. And you have to be really cheap. And we don't think there's been a desk appliance since the telephone. And what we want to do is make Macintosh the second desk appliance. Now, there are about 235 people in America, but only a fraction of them can use a computer. And the message that we have with Macintosh is that it's the computer for the rest of us. And we're going to launch the largest advertising campaign in our history ever to communicate this message to those knowledge workers and college workers. And it's going to kick off on the Olympics on February 6th. And I'd like to show you 5 of those advertisements right now.
It's more sophisticated, yet less complicated. It's more powerful, yet less cumbersome. It can store vast amounts of yesterday, or tell you what's in store for tomorrow. It can draw pictures, or it can draw conclusions. It's a personal computer from Apple that is as easy to use as this. Macintosh, the computer for the rest of us. Introducing Macintosh. It does all the things you'd expect a personal computer to do. It does a lot of things you wouldn't expect a personal computer to do. And it does some things no other computer has ever done before. Of course, to do all of this, you will have to learn to do this. Macintosh. A computer for the rest of us. The real genius of Macintosh, Apple's newest personal computer, isn't its 32-bit microprocessor, or that it captures the power of a mainframe on board 10 by 10 inches, or even that it costs half as much as computers half as powerful. The real genius of Macintosh is that you don't have to be a genius to use it. Macintosh, a computer for the rest of us. You're about to see a few people learn to use the newest, most advanced business computer in the world. If you have a point, you already know how to use it. Macintosh, the computer for the rest of us. This is a highly sophisticated office computer, and to use it, all you have to do is learn this. This is Macintosh from Apple, also a highly sophisticated office computer, and to use it, all you have to do is learn this. Now, you decide which one is more sophisticated.
So if you watch the Winter Olympics, you'll be seeing those about 2 to 3 times a night. Now, you know that over 70% of all the computers used in education are Apples? And that makes us feel really good because we care a lot about that. And it's a great leverage point for the Apple II as well. And most of them are, of course, in kindergarten through 12th grade because that's where most of the schools are, and those schools have bought computers faster than the colleges. But a year ago, we went in search of about half a dozen colleges and universities throughout America who would be using a large number of personal computers in 1984, and large meant greater than 1,000. And we didn't find a half a dozen. We found 24 major colleges and universities. And we announced this last Tuesday the Apple University Consortium, which is formed of the 24 colleges and universities. All the 7 Ivy League schools are part of this. They have placed over $50 million worth of orders today for Macintoshes. And they're going to be doing courseware development, leading the way really for over 3,000 schools in this country. And they're telling us that Macintosh is the ideal college computer. So we think you're going to see lots of Macintoshes on college campuses. And here's a list of them: Stanford, Harvard, Yale, Princeton, Dartmouth, Brown, on and on. And you're going to be seeing a lot of Macintoshes on campuses. Now, when we designed the Apple II, we designed it in the garage. But what most people don't know is we designed it to be built in the garage. And we figure if we ever made 50 of them a month, we'd be doing well. And we surpassed that goal this last December by over 2,000. We shipped over 100,000 Apple IIs in December. But what we wanted to do with Macintosh was make it the first personal computer that was designed from the start to be built in the millions. There's never been a personal computer that you could say this about. We are currently making over 500 Macintoshes a day in this factory. And we will be ramping up to 1 every 27 seconds within the next few months. Now, Macintosh was developed by a small team of people, less than 100, and you're going to have a chance to meet and ask several of them some questions tonight. And this group of people, they're more like artists than they are engineers. They're not really interested in careers. What they're interested in is doing something insanely great and then getting it out into the world to leverage their energy. And they were able to leverage the resources of a billion-dollar company in developing Macintosh. And I've never in my life had the privilege of working with such a fine group of people. And we think, Macintosh has changed our lives working with it over the last few years. And we think it's going to change the lives of millions of people that buy them. Macintosh, as you know, was probably one of the worst-kept secrets in the world. One of the best-kept secrets was that we didn't just introduce one standalone product again. We introduced a family of 4 new 32-bit products this week. And we introduced Lisa a year ago, and it clearly captured the imagination and set the technical direction of the industry. It didn't capture as many desks as we wanted to. But it's clear that everyone's running in the direction of mice and windows and icons, and you've seen Vision, and you're seeing sort of the early part of MS Windows, and even a rumored IBM Windows package. But what we introduced, in addition to Macintosh, were 3 new Lisas. And the first one was Lisa 2. It has a half a megabyte of RAM and a 3.5-inch disk, totally compatible with Macintosh. And we introduced it at $3,495, just $1,000 more than Macintosh. The second Lisa is Lisa 2.5. It added a 5-megabyte profile Winchester disk drive, and that was only $1,000 more again, $4,495. The third Lisa was Lisa 2.10. It's got a built-in 10-megabyte Winchester disk drive right above the floppy disk, and it's $5,495. Now, all the Lisas, we switched over to use the 3.5-inch floppy disk drive. We feel so strongly that it's the drive of the 80s. And it's totally compatible with Mac, and we're doing something for all the existing Lisa 1 owners. We are upgrading their Lisa 1 to a Lisa 2.5. That means changing the 3.5-inch disk drives, or changing the 5 1/4s for 3.5s, and giving them a new front bezel and some new software. And that upgrade is entirely free for all existing owners. So as we move forward with the second iteration of this technology, we absolutely don't want to penalize those pioneers, and so we're just pulling them right along with us at no additional cost. But the other neat thing about all the 3 new Lisas and all the Lisa 1s is that they're 100% Macintosh software compatible. We pulled it off. And together, these four workstations are the foundation of what we're calling the Apple 32 Supermicros. It's a family of compatible products based on Lisa technology and 32-bit architecture. And if you look at the four workstations, they now span a pretty wide range of price and performance, all the way from the key building block, which is Macintosh at $24.95, to sort of the flagship in performance, which is Lisa 210 at $54.95. Now, let me tell you a few other things in addition to workstations, which are going to form the basis of this Supermicros family. The first thing is AppleBus. Now, as you all know, local area networks, the whole area of local area networking is a joke right now. Ethernet never really took off. IBM's been promising the world a local area network now for 2 years and hasn't announced anything. And the last thing the world needs is another local area network. So what we're going to do is simply wait until those standards emerge and connect to those standards. But while those standards are emerging, people still want to hook things together, yet they don't want to pay $1,000 per computer to hook them onto some sort of network. And so what we've done is we have built in AppleBus to every single Lisa 1, Lisa 2s, and Macintosh. It's built in. It operates at 230 kilobits per second and operates up to 1,000 feet. And for about $25 per computer retail, you'll be able to buy a little box that screws in the back that simply has a little transformer and a few connectors in it, and hook up to 32 Macintoshes, Lisas, and peripherals together for virtually free. And we think that this will be a really good idea for the next 24 months until the networking really shakes out. Sort of think of it as freenet. The next thing that we need to do is we need to print out these amazing graphics that we can create. And we have the ImageWriter printer, which we think is pretty much of a breakthrough in terms of the price to do this. It sells for $595, and when you buy it with a Macintosh, it's $495. But something we're really excited about is higher resolution dot printing. And before the end of 1984, we will introduce a breakthrough in laser xerographic printing for under $5,000. And we're working very hard on that. I think when you see the results, you'll be really happy. Next thing that we need is we need to talk to these big blue mainframes. And to do that, we've got a little box called the Afterlife box for about $1,000. It's available now, and it hooks up to any Macintosh release and talks full 3278 Datacom with any IBM mainframe. Does it as well or better than an IBM PC. This fall, you'll see small file servers in the 10 to 20 megabyte class to hook up to AppleBus, a shared Winchester that you can share among a bunch of Macintoshes and Lisas. Be very, very inexpensive. And then something that we'll hope to get out late this year or early next year is a Unix server. And we think Unix is a pretty lousy operating system to put inside a workstation. It's old technology and it's really big and you need a Winchester, so you can never make the workstations cheap. But we think it's a great operating system when you're in a multi-user environment. And what we're going to be doing is coming out with a server, which is a large disk, very fast CPU that hangs on the network, that allows you to run Unix and vertical applications on top of it and use the Macintoshes and Lisas as really sort of new wave terminals into that software. Now, we've thought long and hard about whether we should come out with an IBM PC compatible. And we do a lot of market research. We have a pretty good brand out there in the marketplace, and we could have sold a lot of them. But that's not what we wanted to do. What we want to do is we want to establish a second standard in the office based on radical ease of use and the kind of power that these workstations are able to provide. But we know that if we're going to do that, we need to build bridges to the IBM world. I think there's three major bridges that we have to build. The first one, and most importantly, is for all the great software that runs on the IBM products, we've got to have better versions running on our Apple 32 workstations. And I think by this summer or early fall, we will have accomplished that goal. The second is local area network support. We expect IBM to introduce 1 or 2 local area networks in the April, May, June timeframe, and we will connect to the most prevalent of those networks. And the third is the 3278 data communications, which we're doing now. So we think if we build these 3 bridges to the IBM network, that we can continue to sell better computers. Now, if you go back about 100 years to the 1880s, there were approximately 25,000 trained telegraph operators in the United States. And you really could send a telegram between Boston and San Francisco and take about 3 or 4 hours and go through the relay stations, and it really worked. And it was a great breakthrough in technology that had been around for about 30, 40 years. And there were some people that talked about putting a telegraph machine on every desk in America to improve productivity. And what those people didn't know was about the same time Alexander Graham Bell filed the original patents for the telephone. A breakthrough in technology, because putting a telegraph machine on every desk in America to improve productivity wouldn't have worked. People wouldn't have spent the 20 to 40 to 100 hours to learn Morse code. They just wouldn't have done it. But with the telephone, within 10 years, there were over 200,000 telephones on desks in America. It was a breakthrough because people already knew how to use it. It performed the same basic function, but radical ease of use. And in addition to just letting you type in the words or click in the words, it let you sing. It let you intone your sentences to really get your meanings across. We are at that juncture in our industry right now. There are people suggesting that we should put a current generation box on everyone's desk to improve productivity. A telegraph, if you will. And we don't believe that. We don't think it will work. People will not read those damn 400-page WordStar manuals. They won't carry around these cards in their pockets with 150/WZs. They're not going to do it. And what we think we have here today, finally, is the first telephone. And in addition to letting you do the old spreadsheets and word processing, it lets you sing. It lets you make pictures. It lets you make diagrams where you can cut them and paste them into your documents. It lets you put that sentence in bold Helvetica or Old English, if that's the way you want to express yourself. What we think we've done is we've gotten us back on the track of letting us bring this technology, not just to people that haven't looked up to these big blue boxes and Fortune 500 corporations. Sure, we want to sell our products to those people. But what we're really doing, the reason we're doing what we're doing, is because we want to bring this to tens of millions of people. And never before has the time been riper. And never before, with a radically easier to use 32-bit technology, have we been closer to doing just that. So with that, I'd like to ask everyone to just stand up and relax for a few minutes, and we're going to put a few tables up here and bring the Macintosh software team and one of the members of the hardware team up here and answer whatever questions you might have about what we're doing. Thanks. Starting with my right, your left, I guess.
My name's Steve Katz, and I work a little bit on the run-up and form binder.
My name's David Kutzfeld, and I worked on a lot of the system software for Macintosh.
My name's Randy Wickinson, and I work for word processor. My name's Phil Atkinson. I did the Quick Draw graphics primitive and the Mac Paint application.
I'm Bruce Horn, and I worked on the ROM and on the binder with Steve Katz.
My name is Pearl Smith, and I designed the digital launching board for Macintosh.
My name is Ronnie Seaboss, and I wrote the mouse lesson that you get on your Mac guide and the plot paper.
So we have some really great questions, and we'd like to answer them. But before we do, Bill and Randy are going to run through some really quick demos, which you'll be able to see up on that screen to give you a little feeling for the kinds of things that we can do. I'm going to show you the Mac Paint graphics editor that runs on Macintosh and lets you edit images. Sometimes conveying your message goes better with pictures than with words. What you see when you open up Mac Paint is 3 palettes, a palette of current tools, a palette of patterns, and a palette of border thicknesses. To use them, you point with the mouse and click on a tool and press, stretch out a line here, and release when you've got the line. That shows a different thickness, and do the same. There's structured tools over here that let you make hollow and filled objects, like a filled rectangle here. Choose a pattern to fill it with, and here make a filled oval.
can erase parts of the image using this little thing that looks like a brick. It's supposed to be an eraser, but that's the best I can do. And if you just scrub with it, it kind of eats away. And after you get bored with scrubbing a lot, you can just click twice and it'll get rid of everything. This tool lets me draw a curved filled object. When I let go of the mouse, it will complete the curve and fill it in. Or here, a polygonal object where I just click at each vertex, and when I click twice, it finishes it off for me. Okay? A little more free-form tool is the brush tool. Here, I'll erase things here and draw something with the brush. It's a lot like scribbling with a crayon. You can use it in conjunction with a pattern, and for example, let's choose a large brush shape. You have a variety of shapes you can choose from. You just click on one, and we'll choose a big round brush here, draw with that. And somehow the patterns sort of magically line up. I'm a little nervous. I'm not too good with the mouse. Okay. The next tool here is a spray can. It lets me do smooth shading. I can kind of gradually shade in something, and the longer I spray, the darker it gets. For example, I might take this circle and turn it into a three-dimensional sphere by shading it in. I'll pick up a little bit of white paint and spray with that to put a highlight on it. And I can even control individual pixels. I can point at a dot and turn it on or off. You have to kind of squint a bit, or you can go into fat bits, which lets you see a magnified view, and then it's easy for me to turn on off bits. The hand tool lets me scroll. I can press on the document and push it around underneath the window. So up in the left-hand corner, I'm seeing a normal size view, and here I'm seeing a little bit magnified view so that I can act right on it. If you click in the small size view, you go back to normal size. If you have edges on your document, you can fill in areas using the paint bucket. Some people say it looks like a cap or graduation cap, but it's supposed to be a paint bucket pouring paint out the tip of it. So if you select a pattern and press, you can just fill in with that color of paint. It's like a coloring book. And there's a tool for making text. You can point someplace and type. That's the first time I touched the keyboard. And so I'm not a very good typer. Change the sizes, and that emphasis things, etc. The next two tools at the top allow you to work on a portion of the image. The rectangle selector here says, I want to grab this rectangular chunk of the image, and you see little marching ants around it to help you distinguish what's selected. When you point inside the selection, you can pull on it and it'll come with you. If you hold down the Option key, and as you do so, it leaves behind the old one, so you can peel off a copy easily. If you hold down the Feature key, it stretches it instead. I'll undo that. Notice when I'm dragging this, it carries around a rectangle of white. Sometimes you want to select a non-rectangular selection, and notice it carries just the ball. I just lasso around the object. When I let go, the lasso tightens around it and gets just that thing. Again, Option will peel off a copy, and in fact, Feature and Option will peel off many copies. I select a portion of the image, I can also do edit commands on it. I can say to rotate that on its side. That helps me when I want to put a label on the side of something. Or I can say to select a portion of the image and say flip that horizontally, or flip it vertically, or invert it. Many different transforms that I want to do on the image. So far we've been working on one portion of the page. About a third of it is what you can see it on the screen, so you're dealing with the whole printer full an 8 by 10 page. When you say show page, it'll show you the entire page, and it shows a rectangle that shows what portion you're looking at now. I can pull that rectangle down to another portion of the page and scroll to there and say that's the portion I want to work on. And I prepared an image ahead of time, a little fish, and I'll select that with the lasso and copy that into the clipboard. This lets me take it between different documents. I can paste that into another MacPaint document, or I'm going to quit MacPaint and we'll even paste this into a word processing document. Randy Wigington is not going to show us the MacWrite word processor.
As incredible as MacPaint is, it's really nothing compared to the quick draw routines it's nothing compared to the quick draw routines that Bill wrote for the ROM, and he also wrote for Lisa. If it weren't for Bill, none of us would be up here on this stage. I'd like to thank him for that. No, it's a lot more interesting than a word processor. The whole thrust behind Mac is to make everything easy to use and very visually oriented. As Steve said, we didn't want you to remember a lot of escape/command Z's or anything like that. The whole idea is that whatever you see on the screen is what you're going to get on the printed page, and we wanted things to be simple and easy to use. With MacWrite, even though there's a lot of features, they're all very easy to use. For example, to type, all you do is you simply point the mouse somewhere, you click, and you start typing. Now you type, no green feet. You can also, however, go up and change the style. I'm going to type some underlined text. You can also type lowercase letters. Additionally, you not only have a choice of changing all styles, but you can additionally change the size of any font that you're dealing in. I'm going to go to a larger font. Additionally, we have a large choice of fonts. All of these fonts come provided with each disc. One of my favorites is London, which is Old English. This is wonderful for writing letters to mom. Really think you're getting a classic education this way. Another font that is one of my favorites is one called San Francisco. This is used for Apple's new program called Cons Can't Wait. This isn't a very successful con, because problems. You'll notice here that we have a document that was formatted with left and right margins. However, you haven't so far seen a way to control those. The way we do that is through the use of rulers. The ruler affects the format of the text from it up to the next ruler. If I simply say show rulers, we can see the ruler that's formatting all of this text here. We have choice. We have left margin, the first one is. Over here we have a right margin, where we have a tab stop. Here we have three buttons to determine spacing of your document. Single space, 1.5 space, or double space. You simply click on the box that you want to format the text before you see the bars. We have center justify, right justify, or fill justify, where your margins are fully justified on both sides. We wanted you to see the printer image. The printing routines that were written by Ellen Densmore do all the printing magic, so I can't claim credit there. Here's the table that we entered earlier. Additionally, we wanted you to be able to format tables featuring numerics and normal text and be able to change these and edit these as you wanted. We have two types of tabs. normal tabs and decimal tabs. These are tab wells that I can get extra tabs from. Here's a decimal tab. The decimal tab right justifies text up to a decimal point. Notice that this column, all of the decimal points are lined up. If we simply point at the tab, move it, and let go, the column will reformat underneath the new tab stop. Move it back. This is pretty useful for formatting tables and things like that. Well, earlier, Bill made a picture, and a picture's worth 1,000 words, and we thought we wanted to be able to handle that. So if you simply point and click, we can go ahead and paste, and the picture will now appear in the middle of your word processor document. This is pretty useful for illustrations and graphs and things like that. If you click on it, you can form a box around that. You can move the picture around. You can make your picture real small, make it real large. This is still ugly. Let's make it look like a party. And one feature I forgot to cover was if you wish to replace some text, for example, I wish to have this letter written to Trout rather than Squid, you simply select the text you want to type in, and you type the replacement. Nothing else to remember. You can also go back and change any fonts anytime you want. You can select all of this, put all of that in the San Francisco font, that's my favorite. And we can also make it all large. We can underline it. If you make a mistake at any time, no matter what you've done, you can always go back to the edit menu and select undo, and it'll tell you what you're undoing, and we'll go back to the way it was before. If, for example, you had a lot of this selected, and as happens sometimes, your cat jumps on the keyboard and types that, you simply go up and you say undo, and you're back to where you were. We wanted to make it pretty forgiving so that you wouldn't curse at me later. Okay, thank you.
Do we have any questions we might be able to help answer? Yes.